Today we're gonna speak about an event that changed history. So back in 1971, the United States made an economic choice that began to quietly rewire the entire economic narrative. Even back then, in 1971, the Austrian school economists saw it coming, but most Americans, even today, still don't know what hit them. Let me get into the details and thank you to the Students for Liberty for preparing this material. So the standard narrative goes like this. We say that America is wealthy because America produces more, works harder, is more productive, more innovative than the rest of the world. And you could argue this was true for most of the 20th century. But this hasn't been the full story since August 15th, 1971. That day, US President Nixon ended the dollar's convertibility to gold. It was called the moment America abandoned the last constraint on the printing press, basically printing money. In his 1990s paper, Banking Nation States and International Politics, economist Hans Hermann Hoppe described the post-1971 dollar system as monetary imperialism in plain sight, so they weren't even hiding it anymore. As you know, the gold reserve for the dollar was agreed after the Bretton Woods Conference in 1944. Close to Second World War, all the major powers were looking for an alternative to quickly rebuild the economies, especially the European economies, which were hit hard by the war. So, because the dollar is required for global trade and held as reserve by every central bank, foreign nations must produce real goods like cars, semiconductors, raw materials, you name it, to acquire these dollars. But the United States acquired these goods by creating dollar instead. So Hoppe argues that this fundamentally alters how trade normally operates, introducing a structural privilege that channels real wealth to whoever controls the printing press of dollars, of course. So if we look at the statistics and go back to 1971 when it all began, the US personal savings rate was about 30%. So more or less people were saving money above the recommended 10% threshold. By 2005, this has collapsed to 1.4%. And even now it's 3-4% maybe depending on the statistics you check. So people started to save less and less and less as the dollar became, say, maybe not worthless, but it is worth less every day. In his book, The Theory of Money and Credit, the economist Ludwig von Mises argues that money is never neutral. Money shapes incentives. So when central banks suppress interest rates and the dollar's purchasing power steadily erodes, then saving becomes irrational and spending then becomes the rational choice. Because why save if the money just melts away? It's better to spend it. And of course, not spend it on desires or wants, but spend it on assets. So um, things that will continue to appreciate in value or produce an outcome that is profitable to you. So the result of this change, a nation of savers become a nation of consumers, and as a consequence, debt replaced production as the engine of economical growth. If we look at the federal debt to GDP ratio, in 1970 it was roughly 35%. That was the total debt. It's amazing if you compare to where we are today. In 2024, the federal debt to GDP was roughly 120%. So it's 3 times more than 3 times more. It's concerning. Then the total American debt across government, corporate, household sectors, it's over 700% of GDP. Now, Jörg Guido Hulsmann calls this the debt yoke in his book The Ethics of Money Production. So when debt has no visible consequence, because it can be refinanced indefinitely, definitely through the central bank, then fiscal discipline becomes obsolete at every level, from Washington, from Congress to the household. And if we speak about new money, they don't enter the economy evenly. So when you print money, it first flows to the banks, then to the government contractors, then to the one holding financial assets, and finally, just finally, if at all, to wage earners. So the people get this newly printed money last. And this is called the cantillon effect. So the first recipients of the new money can buy the real goods at the old prices. But by the time the money reaches the workers, then already prices have risen, because the markets have been adjusting to the new quantity of money, having more money, and then they rise the prices to match the new quantity of money. Of course, this has a delay, so the ones that get the money first can use it and still buy at a discount, let's say. While the last ones, which is the working class, the average Joe, gets the money last and already buys at the new inflated prices. So the result is obviously that asset owners grow wealthier and wealthier while wage earners watch their purchasing power erode. When the link between money and real production weakens, the economy reorganizes around what the system rewards. So, manufacturing employment as a share of total employment has fallen roughly from 21% in 1970 to under 8% today. Finance, insurance, real estate now account for a far larger share of GDP than at any point in the American history. This is why a lot of graduates try to choose Wall Street over engineering. They try to use investment hedge funds over startups. They're looking into financial arbitrage or whatever gives them the chance of acquiring more money. And this is a rational response in humans to the incentives shaped by the monetary policy. So, if we look at his chapter, The Cultural and Spiritual Legacy of Fiat Inflation, Hulsmann also agrees that inflation extends beyond economics into the cultural realm, operating as a corrosive force. Yeah. So, when wealth can be created by decree rather than earned through production, then several things follow. Uh, Time horizons shorten, long-term planning becomes obviously irrational, as you are just guessing, and all the qualities that built the American prosperity, thrift, patience, and productive work stop being rewarded, and instead they start being punished. Uh, America made a dangerous trade in 1971. It exchanged gold for paper, production for consumption, discipline for convenience. And the Austrian school saw it even back then. They have been documenting the consequences ever since. Capital consumption, more investment, asset bubbles, a culture that increasingly mistakes financial engineering for building wealth. So, as Holzman and Hoppe both argued in different ways, the reserve currency privilege is a slow rewrite of what kind of people America need to be in order for the system to actually work. Thank you for your attention.